The impact of climate change is no longer a hypothetical one. It is real, and its effects are being felt across all parts of the world. In order to combat this growing problem, it is imperative that we develop and implement effective strategies for climate change mitigation. The future of our planet depends on it. The good news is that there are many potential solutions at our disposal. Whether through green technologies, renewable energy systems, or carbon capture and storage methods, the possibilities for mitigating the effects of climate change are diverse and numerous. At the same time, we must also work to address the underlying causes of climate change, such as the overuse of fossil fuels and the unsustainable practices of many corporations and industries. By taking a holistic approach to climate change mitigation, we can help to create a more sustainable future for all. Of course, none of these strategies will be successful without the buy-in and support of governments, businesses, and individuals across the globe. It's up to all of us to come together, not just for the sake of our planet, but for the well-being of future generations. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues facing the world today, and it is imperative that we take swift action to mitigate its effects. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, global temperatures have already risen by 1.0 degrees Celsius since the pre-industrial period, and are projected to increase by another 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040. This rapid warming has resulted in unprecedented weather events, such as the devastating Hurricane Dorian that hit the Bahamas in 2019, and scientists warn that without immediate action, these events will become more frequent and severe. Fortunately, there are a number of strategies that can be employed to help mitigate the effects of climate change. One of the most effective is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. According to the Global Carbon Project, global CO2 emissions reached a new high of 36.6 billion tons in 2019, an increase of 0.6 over the previous year. To combat this trend, countries around the world are adopting renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. The International Renewable Energy Agency reports that renewable energy capacity grew by 7.4% in 2019, with nearly 75% of this growth coming from solar and wind power. Another strategy for combating climate change is improving energy efficiency. Studies show that reducing energy consumption in buildings and transportation can significantly reduce emissions. The International Energy Agency reports that energy efficiency measures could reduce global energy demand by 12% by 2040, resulting in a reduction of up to 4.5 gigatons of CO2 emissions. Finally, land use practices can also play a role in mitigating climate change. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, deforestation and land use changes account for up to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, reforestation efforts and sustainable agriculture practices can help sequester carbon and reduce emissions. In fact, a study published in the journal Nature found that reforestation on a global scale could sequester up to 0.9 billion tons of carbon each year by 2050. In conclusion, climate change poses a serious threat to our planet, but there are solutions at hand. By reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving energy efficiency, and adopting sustainable land use practices, we can mitigate the damage caused by climate change and create a more sustainable future for generations to come. In conclusion, it is clear that climate change is a pressing issue that requires immediate action. Governments, businesses, and individuals all have a role to play in mitigating climate change and creating a sustainable future. Through implementing strategies such as transitioning to renewable energy, reducing emissions, and increasing energy efficiency, we can work towards minimizing the impacts of climate change on our planet. It is important to recognize that this is not a one-time effort, but rather a continuous process that requires ongoing commitment and dedication. We must also prioritize education and awareness-raising initiatives to ensure that individuals are aware of the role they can play in mitigating climate change. With concerted efforts and a collective commitment to action, we can create a sustainable future for As the world continues to grapple with the devastating effects of climate change, renewable energy solutions have emerged as some of the most effective weapons in the fight against it. From solar and wind power to hydroelectric and geothermal energy, these cleaner, more sustainable forms of power generation are already making a significant impact in communities across the globe. In this video, we'll explore some of the most innovative and effective renewable energy solutions being used today, and examine how they're helping to combat climate change on both a local and global scale. We'll hear from experts in the field, as well as those who are directly benefiting from these solutions, and gain a deeper understanding of the importance of making this transition to cleaner, greener energy. Whether it's reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, mitigating the effects of greenhouse gases on our planet, or simply creating a more sustainable future for generations to come, renewable energy is a critical component of any strategy to combat climate change. So come join us as we explore the exciting world of renewable energy solutions and discover how they're making a positive impact on our world today. Renewable energy solutions are becoming more important than ever in combating climate change. According to the International Energy Agency, renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power accounted for 2/3 of new power added to the global grid in 2019, reaching a record high. This shift towards clean energy is critical as we face the sobering fact that global carbon dioxide emissions continue to rise, reaching an all-time high in 2019 of 36.8 billion metric tons. The adoption of renewable energy is making a significant impact in reducing these emissions, with the United States alone reducing its carbon emissions by 2.1 in 2019. This progress shows that switching to sources such as solar and wind power is a feasible, effective, and sustainable solution to the threat of climate change. The benefits of renewable energy sources extend beyond reducing carbon emissions. According to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power are projected to save the United States $78 billion in healthcare costs alone between 2015 and 2050. This reduction in air pollution can improve public health and have cascading economic benefits. Furthermore, renewable energy is creating numerous job opportunities. In the United States, the solar industry alone employs over 240,000 people, with projections indicating that this number could double by 2030. Similar numbers can be seen worldwide, with employment in renewable energy projected to triple by 2030 to reach over 28 million jobs globally. It is clear that renewable energy solutions are more important than ever in the fight against climate change. However, the transition towards renewable energy sources does not come without challenges. The implementation of clean energy infrastructure can be costly, and there are concerns about the reliability of renewable sources in providing consistent energy output. However, the significant benefits of clean energy outweigh these challenges, and governments worldwide are already taking steps towards cleaner energy solutions. For example, the European Union has committed to sourcing 32% of its energy from renewable sources by 2030, and China has set a goal of producing 35% of its energy from renewable sources by the same year. As our understanding of the importance of clean energy solutions continues to grow, we can expect to see an even more significant shift towards sustainable and renewable energy solutions in the future. In conclusion, the evidence speaks for itself. Renewable energy solutions are making a significant impact in combating climate change. The adoption of sustainable energy sources is not only reducing carbon emissions but is also improving public health, creating new job opportunities, and saving money. These benefits are too significant to ignore, and we must continue to prioritize sustainable energy solutions to ensure a better future for ourselves and the planet. In conclusion, renewable energy solutions are the key to combating climate change. By transitioning to clean energy sources, we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, which are a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. We have the technology and resources to make this switch, it's just a matter of making it a priority. And not only will this help save the planet, but it will also create new job opportunities in the clean energy sector and decrease our dependence on foreign oil. It's a win-win situation. However, we must also remember that renewable energy isn't a magic solution. It requires ongoing investment and innovation to continue to improve its efficiency and reliability. It's also important to address the root causes of climate change, such as deforestation and urbanization. We all have a role to play in combating climate change, from individuals making small changes in their
The Paris Agreement is a historic global effort to address the impacts of climate change. The agreement was reached in 2015, and it has been ratified by 189 countries to date. The goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The agreement sets out a framework for countries to take action on climate change and includes provisions for accountability and transparency. It also emphasizes the need for international cooperation to address the impacts of climate change. The Paris Agreement includes commitments from countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to transition to a low-carbon economy. These commitments are voluntary, but they are expected to increase over time as countries work toward achieving the goals of the agreement. The Paris Agreement is a significant step forward in the global effort to address climate change. It represents a shared commitment by all countries to take action and to work together to protect the planet for future generations. While there is still much work to be done, the Paris Agreement provides a framework for continued progress toward a more sustainable future. The Paris Agreement is a landmark global agreement that aims to tackle the issue of climate change. It was signed in 2015 by every country in the world, and sets out a goal to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. According to the United Nations, the impacts of climate change are already being felt across the world, with extreme weather events, sea level rise, and melting glaciers all having devastating effects. In fact, in 2020 alone, there were 403 natural disasters that caused over $214 billion in economic losses globally. These statistics paint a stark picture of the urgent need to act on climate change. The Paris Agreement aims to achieve its goals by encouraging countries to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, which are a major contributor to global warming. Under the agreement, each country sets its own emission reduction targets, known as nationally determined contributions, NDCs. These NDCs are reviewed every 5 years to assess their progress towards meeting the ultimate goal of limiting global warming. As of March 2021, 191 countries have submitted their NDCs, which collectively cover around 99% of global greenhouse gas emissions. However, some experts argue that these targets are not ambitious enough, and that further action is needed to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. The Paris Agreement also includes provisions for the financing of climate action in developing countries, which have historically contributed little to global emissions but are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. Developed countries commit to providing financial assistance to assist with adaptation to the impacts of climate change and to support low-carbon development. In 2020, developed countries provided $80 billion in climate finance, although this falls far short of the $100 billion per year goal set by the agreement. Despite the global commitment to the Paris Agreement, there are still significant challenges to overcome in order to meet its goals. One major issue is the lack of progress on phasing out fossil fuels, which are responsible for the majority of emissions. In fact, global carbon dioxide emissions rose by 1.5% in 2019, with 2020 levels likely to show a similar increase due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the global economy. These trends suggest that urgent action is needed to shift away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy sources. In conclusion, the Paris Agreement is a historic global commitment to address the pressing issue of climate change. However, significant challenges remain, including the need for more ambitious emission reduction targets, increased financing for climate action in developing countries, and a transition away from fossil fuels. The statistics on the impacts of climate change and the emissions that cause them highlight the critical need for urgent action to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. Only by working together can we hope to create a sustainable future for our planet. In conclusion, the Paris Agreement represents a significant global effort to address climate change. Although not perfect, it is the most cohesive and comprehensive agreement to date and provides a framework for continued progress toward a sustainable future. It aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and strive for 1.5 degrees Celsius, and countries have committed to regularly reassess and strengthen their contributions towards this goal. However, the urgency of the situation demands faster and more ambitious action from all parties involved. The current trajectory is still far from the necessary level of carbon emissions reduction required to meet the objectives of the agreement. As such, continued international cooperation, innovation, and investment in renewable energy and emissions-reducing technologies are crucial in achieving a healthier and more sustainable planet for generations to come. It is important that we keep the momentum going and not lose sight of the goals set out.
In today's world, we are all more aware than ever of the devastating impact that climate change is having on our planet. But despite the growing awareness, many of us still struggle to understand our own individual impact on the environment. That's where the concept of carbon footprints comes in. It provides us with a way to measure our personal contribution to global warming. Our upcoming video will explore the topic of carbon footprints, helping to demystify this important topic and empower individuals to make more sustainable choices in their daily lives. Through the use of powerful visuals and expert commentary from environmental experts, our video will take viewers on a journey of discovery, showing them how everything from their mode of transportation to their diet can impact their carbon footprint. We'll provide simple and actionable tips for reducing your footprint, as well as showcasing some of the innovative solutions that businesses and individuals are already implementing to make a positive impact on the planet. With climate change affecting everyone, it's vital that we all take responsibility for our own actions and do our part to reduce our carbon footprint. Our video is the perfect starting point for anyone looking to make more environmentally conscious choices, and to understand the true impact of their everyday actions. Our individual actions have a significant impact on our planet's climate. Understanding our carbon footprint is crucial in mitigating climate change and preserving our environment for future generations. According to the World Wildlife Fund, the global population's carbon emissions have increased by over 90 since 1970, with the burning of fossil fuels being the primary contributor to this increase. In 2018, the global average of carbon dioxide, CO2, emissions per capita was 4.8 metric tons. However, this varies widely by region, with North America and Australia leading the charts with an average of 16.5 and 15.5 metric tons per capita, respectively. Individuals can significantly reduce their carbon footprint by making conscious decisions to reduce energy consumption, waste, and transportation. The United Nations Environment Programme reports that 40% of global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions come from buildings, so switching to energy-efficient light bulbs or adjusting the thermostat reduces energy consumption and carbon emissions. Additionally, each person generates an average of 4.29 pounds of waste every day in the United States alone. By reducing, reusing, and recycling, we can reduce waste and minimize our carbon footprint. Lastly, the travel sector accounts for approximately 8% of global emissions, with transportation being the second largest source of CO2 emissions globally. Walking or cycling to nearby destinations instead of driving will significantly reduce transportation-related emissions. Those in developed countries have a higher carbon footprint than those in developing countries. However, it is essential to note that global warming affects every person, regardless of their geographic location or socioeconomic status. Climate change contributes to an increase in extreme weather conditions such as hurricanes, droughts, and heat waves. Furthermore, it can lead to detrimental effects on food production, water availability, and human health. The path to a more sustainable future lies in individual action. By understanding our carbon footprint and the impact of our daily activities on the environment, we can contribute significantly to reducing global emissions. It is our responsibility to make positive changes that will lead to a healthier planet for future generations. In conclusion, understanding and reducing our carbon footprint is crucial in the fight against climate change. Each individual has an impact, and by making simple changes in our daily lives, we can collectively make a big difference. Some ways to reduce our carbon footprint include using public transportation, biking or walking instead of driving, using energy-efficient appliances and light bulbs, reducing meat consumption, and incorporating sustainable habits like composting and recycling. Education and awareness are key components in reducing our carbon footprint. By spreading knowledge and encouraging others to take action, we can create a ripple effect that leads to larger change. Governments also have a role in promoting sustainable practices, through policies and regulations that support renewable energy and eco-friendly practices. We must act now to address the climate crisis, or face the dire consequences of a planet that is no longer habitable for humans and wildlife. By understanding our individual impact on the environment and taking steps to
The world is in crisis, and we must face the stark reality that climate change is causing unprecedented suffering for those living in poverty around the world. The devastating effects of global warming are becoming increasingly evident, with rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and more frequent and severe natural disasters. Unfortunately, those who are already living in poverty are the most vulnerable and bear the brunt of these impacts. Many have already lost their homes and their livelihoods, and the situation is only getting worse. We simply cannot ignore the link between climate change and global poverty any longer. As the world's temperatures continue to rise, we are seeing a rise in droughts, floods, and other weather patterns that affect food production and agricultural productivity. This has a domino effect, dramatically increasing prices for food and leading to food insecurity. The poorest and most marginalized communities in the world cannot afford expensive food, and this exacerbates the situation. The connection between climate change and global poverty is clear and unequivocal, and it's up to us to take action. From cutting greenhouse gas emissions to investing in sustainable energy and disaster resilience plans, we have the knowledge and resources to address this crisis. But if we do not act soon, the consequences will be dire. Join us in recognizing the urgent need for action on climate change to break the cycle of global poverty and ensure a brighter future for us all. Climate change is a global phenomenon that is having a profound impact on our planet. It is a complex issue that affects every aspect of our lives, from the air we breathe to the food we eat. And one of the most devastating consequences of climate change is its connection to global poverty. According to the World Bank, more than 100 million people are pushed into extreme poverty every year due to climate change. The impact is particularly severe in developing countries, where people are more vulnerable to the effects of extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, and hurricanes. The statistics on climate change and poverty are staggering. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, climate change is expected to cause agricultural yields to decrease by up to 50% by 2020. This will have a devastating impact on the livelihoods of millions of people who rely on agriculture for their income and food security. In Bangladesh, sea level rise due to climate change is expected to displace 18 million people from their homes by 2050. And in the Pacific Island nations, rising sea levels and stronger storms are already causing significant damage to infrastructure and homes. The impact of climate change on global poverty is not just limited to developing countries, however. In the United States, for example, extreme weather events such as Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy have disproportionately affected low-income communities, many of whom lack the resources to prepare for and recover from these disasters. And according to the National Geographic, rising sea levels and increased flooding are projected to cause more than $1 trillion in losses in American coastal cities by 2100. The devastating impact of climate change on global poverty cannot be ignored. It is a moral imperative that we take action to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the effects of climate change. And while the challenges are daunting, there are also many opportunities for positive change. According to the International Energy Agency, transitioning to a low-carbon economy could actually boost global economic growth by an estimated $1.6 trillion by 2040. In order to address the link between climate change and global poverty, we must first acknowledge the magnitude of the problem. We must also recognize that poverty is not caused by climate change alone, but rather by a complex combination of factors, including economic inequality, political instability, and social exclusion. By addressing these root causes, and by working together to reduce our carbon footprint and support sustainable development, we can build a more just and equitable world for all. In conclusion, the issue of climate change and its connection to global poverty is a pressing concern that requires immediate action. Without urgent intervention, the devastating consequences of climate change will lead to more human suffering, economic loss, and environmental degradation. However, hope remains in the form of collective effort and focused action. It is essential to elevate the voices of marginalized communities, support policy initiatives that prioritize climate change mitigation, and educate individuals to make conscious choices that contribute to the fight against climate change. While the challenges ahead are immense, the possibilities of a sustainable future where everyone can thrive are endless. Climate change might be a global issue, but it affects people on a local level. By working together, we can create a just and equitable world where all can access their basic needs, including clean water, healthy food.
Climate change has been an ongoing topic of discussion for decades, and its devastating impact on our planet is undeniable. However, there is another pressing issue at hand that often goes unnoticed: the loss of cultural heritage due to climate change. Rising sea levels, intense natural disasters, and unpredictable weather patterns are putting numerous cultural and historical landmarks at risk. Our ancestors' legacies are disappearing before our very eyes, and the consequences are far-reaching. From the melting glaciers of the Arctic, challenging the ancient community's way of life, to the iconic Venice canals slowly sinking into the sea, the gravity of this crisis is staggering. In this video, we explore the impact climate change is having on the world's cultural heritage. We interview experts in the field and document the stories of communities who are fighting to preserve their cultural landmarks. We showcase the measures and strategies that are being implemented to protect these invaluable sites from future destruction. Through this video, we aim to raise awareness about the importance of preserving our cultural heritage and spark dialogue on how we can work together to safeguard these invaluable relics for future generations. Climate change is having a devastating impact on our world, causing irreparable damage to many aspects of our environment. One area that is particularly affected is our cultural heritage, the buildings, monuments, and artifacts that form an important part of our shared history. According to a report released by UNESCO, an estimated 31 of the world's cultural sites are at risk due to climate change. In addition, the report also highlights that nearly 50 of the archaeological sites in Asia are threatened by rising sea levels. These alarming figures demonstrate the urgent need for action to be taken to protect our cultural heritage. Not only are these sites and artifacts important from a historical perspective, they also hold significant cultural value to the communities they represent. For example, the Great Barrier Reef is not only a natural wonder, but it is also a crucial part of Australian Indigenous culture. In fact, rising sea temperatures and coral bleaching have already caused irreversible damage to the reef, which has impacted the traditions and livelihoods of many Indigenous communities. This is just one example of how climate change is impacting cultural heritage across the globe. In addition to the direct impact on cultural sites, climate change is also resulting in the loss of cultural knowledge and practices. For instance, rising sea levels are forcing many coastal communities to abandon their traditional ways of life, which often involved fishing and other activities that relied heavily on the ocean. As a result, the cultural knowledge and traditions associated with these practices are slowly being lost. The loss of cultural heritage is not just a matter of losing physical structures or artifacts, it is also loss of identity, traditions, and history. It's not all doom and gloom, though. There are steps we can take to mitigate the damage caused by climate change and protect our cultural heritage. For example, investing in renewable energy sources can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which in turn will help to slow the rate of climate change. Additionally, more needs to be done to raise awareness about the importance of cultural heritage and how it can be protected. Initiatives such as the Unite for Heritage campaign, which aims to raise awareness about the importance of cultural heritage, are important steps in the right direction. In conclusion, the loss of cultural heritage due to climate change is a serious issue that demands urgent action. As individuals, communities, and governments, we must take responsibility for the impact we are having on the environment, and work together to preserve our shared history and traditions. This will not only benefit us, but also future generations who deserve the right to learn about and appreciate the rich cultural heritage of our world. In conclusion, it's clear that climate change poses a serious threat to our World Heritage sites and cultural treasures. Rising sea levels, erosion, and extreme weather events are already causing irreversible damage to many of these sites and putting future generations at risk of losing important pieces of our history. However, it's not too late to take action to mitigate the effects of climate change and protect our cultural heritage. Governments, organizations, and individuals must all work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and invest in sustainable solutions. We must also prioritize conservation efforts and ensure that vulnerable sites are protected and monitored. By doing so, we can preserve our shared cultural heritage for generations to come and honor the experiences and histories of those who came before us. The loss of cultural heritage due to climate change is a tragedy we must work to prevent. With dedication, action, and education, climate change is leading to a devastating rise in sea levels across the world. The oceans are absorbing an unprecedented amount of heat, and as water warms, it expands and takes up more space. This, coupled with the melting of glaciers and ice sheets, is contributing to an alarming increase in sea levels. The impact is already being felt in some of the world's most vulnerable areas, with small island nations facing existential threats. The effects of rising sea levels can be seen in coastal erosion, flooding, and saltwater intrusion into freshwater systems. Entire communities could be displaced, and infrastructure such as roads, ports, and airports could be damaged beyond repair. It is critical that we take immediate action to mitigate the effects of climate change, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions and investing in adaptation and mitigation measures. This is not just a problem for future generations to solve but is something that requires action now. Our oceans are vital components of our planet's respiratory and regulatory systems, and if they continue to rise at these unprecedented rates, the consequences could be catastrophic for all life on Earth. Climate change is causing profound changes to our planet, and one of the most noticeable effects can be seen in the rising sea levels. The oceans are rising at an alarming rate, with the global average sea level increasing by over 8 inches since 1880, and most of that rise has occurred in the last few decades. In fact, sea levels are now rising at a rate of about 0.13 inches per year, which may not sound like much, but it's an alarming trend. The reasons for this rise are complex, but largely driven by the increasing global temperatures. As the planet heats up, glaciers and ice caps are melting at an unprecedented rate, and this is causing water to pour into the oceans. The oceans themselves are also expanding due to the heat, adding to the overall increase. The impact of rising sea levels is already being felt in many parts of the world. Coastal cities and low-lying islands are particularly vulnerable, with some already experiencing regular flooding and damage to infrastructure. The risks are also increasing for severe weather events like hurricanes and typhoons, which can cause devastating damage. Perhaps the most concerning impact of rising sea levels is the threat it poses to millions of people who live in vulnerable areas. It's estimated that over 600 million people live in areas that are at risk from sea level rise and flooding by 2100. This will require a significant adaptation effort, with potentially unprecedented levels of migration, relocation, and infrastructure investment required. Despite these challenges, there is still hope for mitigating the impact of rising sea levels. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is the most critical action we can take, as this will slow down the rate of sea level rise and prevent further catastrophic impacts. In addition to this, we need to invest in adaptation measures, such as building seawalls and investing in more resilient infrastructure. In conclusion, the rising sea levels are a clear and alarming signal of the impact that climate change is having on our planet. The statistics are clear, and the consequences of inaction will be severe. We need to take action now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of rising sea levels, before it's too late. In conclusion, the evidence is clear that climate change is causing rising sea levels and threatening the future of our planet. The impacts of sea level rise are not just limited to coastal cities and communities, but they also threaten the marine ecosystem, which plays a critical role in maintaining the balance of our planet. The time to act is now, and we cannot afford to ignore this pressing issue any longer. We need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, transition to clean energy, and take measures to adapt to the impacts of sea level rise. This will require global cooperation and collective action from governments, private sector, individuals and communities. It is not too late to make a difference. We have the power to change the course of our planet's future. By working together, we can ensure a sustainable future.
From the Arctic to the Amazon, the impacts of climate change are being felt in indigenous communities around the world. As temperatures rise, glaciers melt, and sea levels increase, entire ecosystems are being disrupted, leading to food shortages, water scarcity, and the loss of traditional livelihoods. For these communities, who rely on the land and its resources for their survival, the effects of climate change are deeply unsettling, threatening the very integrity of their culture and way of life. But despite the challenges, indigenous communities are responding with resilience, wisdom, and innovation, drawing on their traditional knowledge and practices to adapt to the changing environment. From sustainable agriculture to renewable energy, from community-based monitoring to the revitalization of cultural practices, these communities are showing us that a different approach to development is not only possible but essential in the face of a rapidly changing climate. This documentary takes viewers on a journey through some of the world's most vulnerable indigenous communities, exploring the impacts of climate change and the innovative solutions being developed to address them.
The world is changing at an unprecedented pace, and with it, comes the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced: climate change. Rising temperatures, sea levels, extreme weather events, and environmental degradation are just some of the many issues that threaten our planet's ecosystems, biodiversity, and societies. The time to act is now, and we must adapt to the changing climate by building resilient societies. But what does building resilience really mean? It means taking an innovative approach to climate change adaptation that empowers communities, businesses, and governments to adapt to and thrive in the changing climate. It means investing in infrastructure that is resilient to extreme weather events, improving access to clean water and energy, and promoting sustainable land use practices. Climate change adaptation is not just about survival, it's about transforming our societies into something better, more sustainable, and inclusive. By working together and building resilience, we can create a future that is equitable, just, and prosperous for all. Join us on our journey to learn more about climate change adaptation and building resilient societies. Let's work together to secure a sustainable future for generations to come. Climate change is an issue we can no longer ignore. The statistics are alarming. According to NASA, the Earth's temperature has risen by 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.0 degrees Celsius, since the 19th century, and the 20 warmest years on record have occurred since 1981. The effects of this global phenomenon are being felt around the world, from rising sea levels and more frequent natural disasters to mass extinction of wildlife and displacement of people. Building resilient societies requires us to adapt to the changes that are already happening and prepare for those that are yet to come. One of the key ways we can adapt to climate change is by increasing our knowledge and understanding of it. Education and awareness campaigns can help individuals and communities understand the impacts of climate change and what they can do to mitigate its effects. This can range from simple actions like reducing energy consumption and waste, to more complex and large-scale initiatives like renewable energy projects or carbon sequestration. Another important aspect of climate change adaptation is the development of climate-resilient infrastructure. This means designing and building infrastructure that can withstand the changing climate. For example, buildings can be designed to use less energy, use sustainable materials, and be more resistant to natural disasters. Transportation systems can be improved to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and be better equipped to handle extreme weather events. The main goal is to reduce vulnerability and increase the resilience of our communities. Finally, building resilient societies also requires political action and international cooperation. Governments and organizations need to work together to implement policies and regulations that prioritize climate change adaptation. This can include measures such as promoting renewable energy, increasing funding for climate research and development, and enacting laws that reduce carbon emissions. Additionally, international collaboration is necessary to address the global nature of climate change and ensure that shared resources and knowledge are available to all. In conclusion, climate change adaptation is crucial to building resilient societies. By increasing education and awareness, building climate-resilient infrastructure, and taking political action and international cooperation, we can mitigate the effects of climate change and prepare for a more sustainable future. It is time for individuals, communities, and governments to take action and work together to tackle this global issue. As we've seen throughout this video, climate change is already impacting communities across the globe in significant and often devastating ways. But amidst these challenges, there is also hope. Through innovative strategies and integrated approaches, communities and decision makers are working to build more resilient societies that can adapt to the changes that are already underway. Whether it's implementing nature-based solutions like wetland restoration or investing in green infrastructure like rooftop gardens and permeable pavement, there are countless ways to build climate resilience. And importantly, these efforts can also yield co-benefits like improved air and water quality and enhanced biodiversity. Of course, there is still much work to be done, and the urgency of the climate crisis demands collective action at all levels.
Climate change is already having a major impact on our global economy. In the video, The Economics of Climate Change Costs and Benefits, we explore the economic implications of climate change and the costs and benefits associated with addressing this critical issue. As temperatures continue to rise, industries such as agriculture, tourism, and insurance are significantly affected, resulting in billions of dollars in losses and damages. We will delve into these industries and more, examining the ways in which they are impacted and the costs associated with climate change. Additionally, the video will also explore the benefits of addressing climate change. While there are upfront costs associated with transitioning to cleaner energy sources and adopting more sustainable practices, the long-term benefits are significant. These benefits include reduced healthcare costs, increased energy independence, and job creation in renewable energy sectors. Overall, the economics of climate change costs and benefits will provide a comprehensive overview of the economic impacts of climate change and the opportunities associated with addressing this issue. With a clear understanding of the costs and benefits, we can make informed decisions and take necessary actions to safeguard our economy and our planet. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our time. The impacts of climate change will be felt across the globe, and the costs of inaction will be very high. The economic costs of climate change are already significant, and they will only increase if we do not take action. According to a report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, the global economic costs of climate change are estimated to be between 0.2 and 2% of global gross domestic product, GDP, per year. This translates to trillions of dollars in lost economic output and thousands of billions of dollars in damages. However, the costs of taking action on climate change must also be considered. While there will be costs associated with transitioning to a low-carbon economy, there are also significant benefits. The transition to renewable energy sources will provide economic opportunities, creating new jobs and industries. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, the global renewable energy sector employed 11 million people in 2018. This number is predicted to rise to 28 million by 2050, creating significant economic benefits. Moreover, investing in climate change mitigation and adaptation measures can also result in significant cost savings. The IPCC has estimated that investments in adaptation measures can provide a return of 2 to 10 times the amount invested. For example, investing in flood prevention measures can prevent billions of dollars in damages each year. In addition, taking action on climate change can also have other benefits. Clean energy sources can reduce air pollution, which causes significant health impacts. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, air pollution is responsible for more than 7 million premature deaths each year. By transitioning to clean energy sources, we can reduce these health impacts and save billions of dollars in healthcare costs. In conclusion, the economics of climate change costs and benefits is complex. While there are significant costs associated with inaction, there are also significant economic benefits to taking action. Investing in clean energy sources and climate change mitigation and adaptation measures can create new economic opportunities and cost savings while also improving public health. As we continue to tackle this,
climate change is one of the biggest challenges facing humanity. It is a complex and multifaceted problem that demands a global response. The impact of climate change is affecting every part of the world, causing a wide range of environmental, social and economic problems. Changes in weather patterns are causing droughts, floods, and extreme weather events. These are causing a wide range of problems such as food insecurity, migration, and humanitarian crises. It is clear that we need to act now to mitigate the impact of climate change, and one of the most important ways we can do this is through international cooperation. International cooperation is fundamental to addressing climate change. It provides a framework for countries to work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the changes that are already happening. It also helps to coordinate efforts to develop renewable energy, improve energy efficiency, and promote sustainable development. By working together, countries can share knowledge, resources, and expertise, and achieve far more than they could on their own. This is why international cooperation is crucial in addressing climate change. In this video, we explore the role of international cooperation in tackling climate change, and introduce initiatives that aim to bring about changes in policies that affect climate change. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and its impact can already be seen around the world. According to the United Nations, 2019 was the second hottest year on record, and the past decade was the warmest on record, statistics that demonstrate the urgent need for action. The Paris Agreement, an international treaty to mitigate climate change, is a testament to the growing recognition of the need for international cooperation on this issue. As of 2021, 189 countries have ratified the agreement, committing to take steps to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. However, it is clear that more needs to be done. As of now, the world is still on track for a temperature rise of over 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century, which would have catastrophic consequences on our ecosystems and societies. This highlights the importance of continued cooperation and collaboration between nations to create a sustainable and livable future for generations to come. The role of international cooperation is crucial in this fight against climate change, and every individual and nation must do their part to create a greener and more equitable world. In conclusion, climate change is a global problem that needs a global solution. International cooperation is vital in addressing this issue, as countries must work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. The Paris Agreement is a crucial step in the right direction, but more action is needed to ensure its success. Countries must take responsibility for their own emissions and work towards ambitious targets for reducing them. This includes investing in renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and transitioning away from fossil fuels. It also means supporting developing countries in their efforts to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Individuals can also play a role in addressing climate change, by making lifestyle changes and supporting policies that prioritize the environment. By reducing our carbon footprint and advocating for change, we can help ensure a sustainable future for ourselves and future generations. In the end, international cooperation is the key to addressing climate change.
Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and yet it remains a highly politicized and polarizing topic. In recent years, the debate over environmental policy has become increasingly entrenched in partisan politics, with different sides fiercely advocating for their own interests. However, the consequences of climate change are far-reaching and affecting everyone, regardless of political affiliation. This video aims to explore the complex dynamics between climate change and politics, and how environmental policy is shaped by these forces. Through interviews with experts in the field and a deep dive into the latest research on climate change, viewers will gain a comprehensive understanding of the issue and its political implications. We will explore the history of environmental policy, from the early days of conservationism to the current state of polarized politics, and how different actors such as NGOs, governments, and corporations interact with each other to shape policy outcomes. Furthermore, we will investigate the impact of climate change on vulnerable communities, globally and in the U.S., and how policy decisions can mitigate or exacerbate these effects. Overall, this video aims to provide an objective and informative analysis of environmental politics in the era of climate change. Climate change is an unprecedented global crisis that demands immediate and sustained action from policymakers around the world. According to a recent report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the average global temperature has already increased by 1 degree Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This may not seem like much, but it has led to more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, floods, and storms, resulting in significant economic, social, and environmental costs. The science is clear. More than 97% of climate scientists agree that human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, are the primary cause of climate change. Yet, climate change has become an increasingly politicized issue, and environmental policy has become the subject of intense political debate and polarization. In the United States, for instance, the Trump administration withdrew from the Paris Agreement, which is signed by almost every country in the world and aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. The Trump administration also weakened or rolled back regulations on pollution, endangered species, and public lands, arguing that they stifled economic growth and job creation. However, the truth is that environmental protection and economic prosperity can go hand in hand. A report by the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate found that investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency could generate more economic growth, create more jobs, and improve public health outcomes compared to continuing reliance on fossil fuels. The politics of environmental policy cannot be ignored. According to a recent study by the Pew Research Center, there is a significant partisan divide over climate change recognition in the U.S. Roughly 79% of Democrats believe that climate change is mostly due to human activity, whereas only 15% of Republicans agree. This divide is not exclusive to the U.S., as a similar trend can be observed in other countries. That said, there are encouraging signs that more people are beginning to recognize the severity of the climate crisis and the urgency of taking action. A 2019 poll by the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication found that 70% of Americans support the idea of a Green New Deal. A similar poll commissioned by the European Union found that 92% of Europeans consider climate change as a serious problem. The challenge now is to turn global concern and ambition into concrete policy action. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is set to convene in Glasgow, Scotland, in November 2021, for the 26th Conference of the Parties, COP26, where countries are expected to increase their ambitions to reduce emissions and embrace a more sustainable future. In conclusion, climate change and the politics of environmental policy is a complex issue that engages science, economics, sociology, and politics. The evidence of anthropogenic climate change is clear, and the costs of inaction are staggering. However, solutions can also bring multiple benefits, from economic growth to social equity and public health. The challenge now is to overcome the barriers and seize the opportunities that await us in the transition to a low-carbon and resilient future. In conclusion, climate change is a critical issue that demands urgent attention and action from policymakers and citizens worldwide. Environmental policies play a crucial role in mitigating the impacts of climate change and preserving our planet for future generations. However, the politics surrounding environmental policy are complex and often divisive, making it challenging to establish effective and sustainable solutions. It is essential to acknowledge the diverse perspectives and interests of various stakeholders and work towards finding common ground for collaborative action. Additionally, individual actions such as reducing carbon footprints and supporting sustainable practices can contribute to the global effort to combat climate change. We must prioritize the health of our planet and recognize that our actions have consequences for the environment and future generations. It is time to push beyond political motivations and prioritize the well-being of the planet and all its inhabitants. Together, we
The world is changing, and the way we live in it must change too. Climate change is at the forefront of this global transformation, and cities are feeling the impacts of it more than ever before. As urbanization continues to grow at an unprecedented rate, the challenges of climate change are further amplified, driving the need for a paradigm shift towards sustainable urban development. This video script explores how cities can meet the challenges imposed by climate change and urbanization, with a focus on innovative solutions to achieve sustainability goals. From rising temperatures to more frequent natural disasters, the effects of climate change are increasingly evident in urban areas around the world. The pressure to adapt to these challenges is high, and cities must take bold actions to transition towards low-carbon, resilient, and sustainable ecosystems. We will explore how cities like Copenhagen, Amsterdam, and Barcelona are leading the way forward with visionary policies and sustainable practices. We will also showcase the latest technologies and strategies that are being implemented to create green cities of the future. This video script is designed to inspire and inform municipal leaders, policymakers, and urban planners to take action towards sustainable urbanization and climate change abatement. Climate change and urbanization have emerged as significant challenges for cities across the world. The rising global temperatures and changing weather patterns have intensified the challenges of urbanization, making it more difficult for cities to adapt and thrive. According to recent statistics, around 55% of the world's population lives in urban areas, and this number is projected to increase to 68% by 2050. This rapid urbanization puts enormous pressure on cities to provide adequate infrastructure, housing, and public services. However, the challenges posed by climate change have made this task even more challenging. One of the most significant impacts of climate change on cities is the increased likelihood of extreme weather events. A recent study has shown that the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events such as floods, storms, and droughts have increased by more than 50% in the last few decades. This has put enormous pressure on the infrastructure of cities, leading to significant damage, disruption, and loss of lives. According to the United Nations, climate change-related disasters have cost over $2.3 trillion globally in the last 2 decades. Another challenge of climate change and urbanization is the increased demand for energy and resources for cities. Cities consume more than 75% of the world's energy and account for more than 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. The current model of urbanization is highly energy intensive, and the demand for energy is projected to double by 2050. This poses a significant challenge for cities to shift towards sustainable modes of development and reduce their carbon footprint. Furthermore, climate change and urbanization have significant social implications. As cities grow, the demand for housing, transportation, and public services also increases. However, the benefits of urbanization are often unevenly distributed, with marginalized populations facing significant challenges in accessing basic services. According to the World Bank, over 800 million people in urban areas lack access to basic services such as clean water and sanitation. Climate change exacerbates these challenges, leading to further inequality and social exclusion. To address these challenges, cities need to adopt a holistic approach to urbanization that takes into account the impacts of climate change. This involves investing in sustainable infrastructure, promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy, building resilience to extreme weather events, and ensuring that the benefits of urbanization are equitably distributed. According to recent statistics, cities that have invested in sustainable infrastructure and climate action have seen significant economic, social, and environmental benefits. This includes job creation, improved public health, and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. In conclusion, climate change and urbanization pose significant challenges for cities across the world. However, with the right policies, investments, and planning, cities can successfully navigate these challenges and build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. Cities have a critical role to play in addressing climate change and creating a sustainable future for all. In conclusion, addressing the challenges of climate change and urbanization in cities requires a collaborative effort from various stakeholders. Governments, urban planners, local communities, and the private sector must work together to mitigate the impact of climate change and ensure sustainable urban development. This includes investing in green infrastructure, promoting renewable energy, reducing carbon emissions, and adapting to rising sea levels and temperatures. Cities must also prioritize the well-being of their residents, particularly those in vulnerable communities, by providing affordable housing, access to green spaces, and reliable public transportation. It is essential that cities take a proactive approach to climate change and urbanization challenges, rather than waiting for crises to occur. By doing so, they can build resilience and create livable, thriving communities for generations to come. The time for action is now.